Morning's webinar around entrepreneurship to the point. Entrepreneurship to the point is a platform that provides information through to entrepreneurs around getting to the point about things that are challenging to them. My name is Sean Tennyson. I'll be your host this morning, and welcome to all our listeners as well during this time. Our aim this morning is really to unpack some of the relief funds that have been made available for small and growing businesses. And we will have Bridget Fury with us that will be unpacking some of those challenges and some of the responses from the market. Bridget is from the Oppenheimer Philanthropy Foundation, and they have made 1 billion rand available to support small and growing businesses. But also we want to be able to really get a sense from some of the listeners as well, what are some of their challenges out in the market and how they are keen to really respond to it. Entrepreneurship to the point, you can visit our website, www.ettp.co.za. And that's really our aim to get to the point of things that is pertinent for entrepreneurs. Yeah, let's just recap some of the funds that government has put in place. Good morning, Bridget. Firstly, let's just
good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Apologies if a child appears at some point, so just put that out there.
Yes, no, I think that this is what we find ourselves in as we are in lockdown, being able to multitask and virtually get together, as well as work in our homes with our kids running around. So definitely fully allowed during this time. I just want to once again unpack some of the funds that has been made available for small and growing businesses. So we had a government's response through the Department of Small Business Development that has put together an SMME relief fund of 500 million. And that fund, we were hoping to get someone from government on board. We will be having another webinar unpacking that fund and just really looking at some of the practical technicalities around applying for it, who is eligible for that fund, and how do you go about applying for it. So please do follow us on all the social media channels, and we will unpack some of those opportunities with the SMME fund. We've also had the Rupert family that has partnered up with business partners. Hopefully within the course of the week and next week, we'll be able to also unpack some of the technicalities around how a small business would be able to apply for that fund. But today we will be unpacking the Oppenheimer response to COVID-19 and really how the Oppenheimer family is putting together a relief fund that will support small and growing businesses. Welcome to all the listeners as well. Please do give us an indication where you are dialing in from, who you are, and if you have any specific questions, what those questions would be. We will also be having some polls during the session, so please do respond to the polls and let's hear some of your feedback as we speak. So Bridget, if we can maybe just kick off the session specifically from what the Oppenheimer family has done just over a week ago. In the president's address, he had mentioned that there would be 1 billion rand that the family has put together in conjunction with other funds and companies that have come on board. This has now seen the formation of the South African Future Trust. Can we first unpack what the vision is around the South African Future Trust and what really led the Oppenheimer family to establishing the trust?
Sure. So thank you, Sean, and hi to everybody. Yeah, so I think as soon as COVID-19 sort of hit the family, and I should be specific here in terms of it is part of the Oppenheimer family, so Nikki and Jonathan and their respective families, which operate under the kind of community of Oppenheimer Generations. And I head up Oppenheimer Generations Philanthropy, just to be clear about my role. So the family thought long and hard about a number of responses. I mean, they felt that they wanted to make a significant contribution, or as significant as they could, or felt was appropriate. And the history, I guess, of the family has always been around supporting business and growing businesses, and the real importance of business to an economy and to sustainability. So the obvious central relief that they wanted to provide was to small businesses, the real engine of our economy. And so they agreed that they would make a pledge of R1 billion to set up an independent trust, the South African Future Trust, which was set up last week, Wednesday, in the most remarkable speed. And we have the government and many others to thank to get it over the line. It now has, it is independent of the family. The funds will flow into it today, I believe. And it will be run independently with 4 independent trustees and 1 member of the family. So it will be entirely ring-fenced from the family. And its primary function in the first instance is to provide loans to qualifying SMMEs, and I can talk about what qualifies in terms of an SMME, in order specifically to cover some salary costs of their employees. So the idea in the first instance, we're working with 4 of the leading banks currently. So Standard, ABSA, Nedbank, and FNB have come on board as partners to be our agents in helping their clients in the first instance to apply for this funding and then to disperse the money on our behalf directly into employees' accounts. So our view is that we wanted to alleviate the financial burden on SMMEs on their payroll, but also ideally to keep people employed over what we've currently deemed a 15-week period, and allow those, to try and prevent the retrenchments that are probably inevitable. So it is a 750 Rand weekly stipend over 15 weeks to employees of SMMEs who are currently banked with those 4 banks. We are hoping to widen it to other banks and to others, but just for speed and efficiency, we wanted to get it out the door as quickly as possible. The SMMEs we are targeting are those with a turnover of less than 25 million Rand, and who have and can demonstrate that they have been affected by COVID-19. And importantly, and I think this is an important consideration for the banks, is that these are businesses that were financially stable and if not thriving, were in good nick before COVID hit. We certainly don't want to be supporting businesses that were already in distress. And the relief comes in the form of an interest-free 5-year loan to the SMME, and it is repayable after 5 years, but entirely interest-free and subordinated completely to other debt. So we didn't want to add a burden on the SMMEs. We have specifically gone with a very straightforward and simple application process. We want people to be able to apply. The banks will all be up and running by Friday. We want the businesses to be able to apply really without too much onerous paperwork on their behalf, and we want to be dispersing money into employees' accounts next week.
So Bridget, a couple of questions that we have, and,
Sure.
we also joined by 2 of our businesses from Property Point on the panel, which we'll go to a bit later, and also quite a few listeners. When we speak about, firstly, financially stable or financially sound, is the litmus test really going to be by the banks, and if so, what are they using as the instrument to test the financial stability of a business?
So yes, until such time as as SAFT itself is able to set itself up to administer these loans themselves, we are relying on the banks. And specifically, we are relying on the banks to deal with their own clients. So these are businesses that they know and understand. And what we have said, or what we've agreed amongst the partners, is that as a kind of ballpark, these businesses need to have been in good standing as at the 29th of February. They, in an ideal world, unless particular circumstances apply, would have had no arrears at that point. And these would be businesses that were, in any reasonable assumption, were good businesses that were working well. And we've really left it up to the banks. We didn't want to be too prescriptive about very strict criteria. So we've used a reasonableness criteria for the banks to say, on the basis of what we know, the particular sectors and the types of businesses that have been affected by COVID-19, those are the businesses that we are most likely to support, but we haven't put specific sectors around it, because you could be an engineering business who was doing terribly well and then business stopped as of 6 days ago. And then that's a very reasonable expectation that those employees are unlikely to be paid. So we've been very light in terms of the criteria. These businesses ideally would have been trading for 24 months. They would have a good credit history determined by the banks. They would be in good standing. They would have been financially stable as of the 29th of February. And as I said, sort of lower than 25 million rand turnover, but sector agnostic and relatively light in terms of kind of requirements for documentation. Most of the application process is around declaration of fact and an undertaking that the businesses will enter into with when they sign the loan agreement with the banks.
So just, will each bank have their own additional set of criteria based on their ability to assess, kind of go through a credit committee? And with that being said, one of the challenges small and growing businesses often have is the ability to really be bankable and tap into loans from a bank. Is it going to be as stringent as trying to apply for a business loan? Or is this a question that we need to be asking?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And we would have failed miserably if that was the case. We do not expect the banks to take on any of this risk. The risk will sit at SAFT. The banks will act as our agents. They will not have stringent credit committees. There will not be any onerous expectations of the businesses to go through. We want businesses that can apply, meet the very basic criteria, make a kind of a reasonableness assessment of whether these businesses were affected or are being affected by COVID-19. These were sound and stable businesses. They meet the criteria. They provide a list of their employees with their ID numbers, their bank accounts, and the money flows through to them next week.
Okay, so then the next complexity is that you spoke about the fact that they need to be able to demonstrate that they've been affected by COVID-19. What test is going to be used to look at the impact of COVID-19 on the business?
Again, it's a reasonableness assessment. So if you are a restaurant or a tour operator or a business which has had to shut suddenly, that is sufficient for us in terms of we can logically see that COVID-19 will have had an impact on your business. So there is no requirement to provide documentation, to provide financials, nothing of that sort.
Okay. And then the next thing is it's 750 over the 15 weeks period per employee. So that equates to about just 11,250.
That's right.
This will be flowing through to the employee. Is this something that will be taxed?
No. We have had assurances from SARS that this is non-taxable. And so no, the employee will take on no risk themselves and they will not have a tax liability.
Okay, and then is it limited in terms of the number of employees? It's
not. I think our limitation is around the size of the business as opposed to the number of employees. So no, businesses that are employing 50 or 100 people could apply just alongside ones that employ 2 people.
Okay, so and can a business tap into this relief fund as well as those that have been set out by government or other players in the marketplace?
Yes, so we had a long debate about whether we were comfortable with so-called double dipping, and our view is that businesses are under such stress that they should be able to apply for every bit of relief and funding that they can get. So we are not restricting them.
Okay, so I think once again, businesses, what we've heard is that you are able to really engage with the 4 major banks. So that's ABSA, Standard Bank, Nedbank, and First National. Those are the beginning, or those are the first operatives within this scheme within this relief fund. If you are turning over less than 25 million and you are in good standing with your bank in terms of your credit history, in terms of your basic compliance, you are able to apply. This would be a loan that goes through to your employees. So it's 750 Rand per employee over a 15-week period. Where does the liability, so the small business really takes out the loan or stands authority for the loan. Are you guys expecting the small business to lock in that employee through a contract as well, or is it really up to the small business in terms of how
it's up to the small business? I mean, I think the reason that we ended up going with a 5-year interest-free loan was that with the SMME entering into the loan agreement, is we wanted businesses that were in all likelihood going to try their very best to keep people on their books, because ultimately they are liable to pay this back in 5 years' time. So we didn't want businesses, for instance, if we had decided to go with a grant mechanism with no kind of liability on the business, we felt that more businesses might apply, allow their workers, their employees to participate for the 15 weeks, and then may well lay them off anyway. So we wanted to try and work with businesses that were genuinely keen to keep their employees fed and allowed a bit of support, and ideally would come out the other side and would be able to continue as normal. But we also don't know what the future holds. And so we cannot expect small businesses to guarantee that they're going to keep people on the books. So we would like them to, and we think this mechanism helps them to do that, but we don't know how long this is going to take or what the impact is long-term going to be on these businesses.
So I think we've got quite a few businesses on the line. Our chat group is going crazy. Please, businesses, I would encourage you to really ask your questions in the chat, and we'll try and answer all the questions either on the chat or during the call. We've got a question here from Cecilia saying that the question is really, if your turnover is above 25 million, you do not qualify. So maybe the question is why the decision to go look at 25 million and below.
Sure. To be honest, again, we had a debate amongst the banks and ourselves around where that was. Was it 20? Was it 30? Was it 45? Ultimately, we just made a call that we were wanting to support a particular segment of the market, and that was the sort of cutoff. What I would say, though, to businesses, and you would have to have a conversation with your banks, but if you happen to be a 30 million Rand business, I think that we would leave it up to the discretion of your bank to decide whether you were appropriate for this fund. But I think what we also have to understand is that 1 billion Rand seems like a lot of money, but once you have done the calculations, that's 88,000 employees that we can support for 15 months with 750 Rand. So we had to create some parameters somewhere.
Okay, awesome. So another question comes from Claire. Will businesses be able to apply for the fund as well as UIF, temporary employment relief schemes, to cover employee salary? I think, Claire, yes, what we said was they are able to do that. The aim is really, and I think it's if we unpack what the Oppenheimer generations has put together through the South African Future Trust, is really to look at how do we keep employees on the books employed so that so as a business you're able to continue. So whatever means you are able to tap into, you would be keen into. We've got two of our businesses on the line, 3 of our businesses on the line as well. And Roland, I'm going to start with you if you have any questions to maybe ask Bridget a question. Also take the opportunity to quickly introduce your business. In terms of the chat, we've got businesses that are throughout South Africa, I think the demand for the information, Bridget, is so pertinent at this point in time.
Yeah.
I think that businesses, what we're seeing is there's an anxiety that all these things are being shared, but the technicalities of it are not being shared. So thanks once again for joining us this morning to unpack. Roland, do you have a specific question for Bridget?
Hi, good morning, Sean. Good morning, Bridget. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Bridget, my question would just be around the 750 Rand a week. I did hear that you said that the amount of employees, so you say that a business could have from 1 employee to 100. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Well, it can have as many as it's got. I mean, we have put we've put no restrictions on it. So a business could have 200. I was just using that as an example.
Okay, okay. And the second question would be, Bridget, in terms of the, I know you did say that the criteria at the banks is not so stringent. I've seen a lot of questions from the guests that were coming through in terms of business owners who don't have a good-looking credit history. Is the business credit history or the director's credit history taken into account when it comes to this criteria?
So to go back to my point is that we are leaving this to some extent to the discretion of the banks. And what the banks have said to us is that, because we went into this thinking you would have to have a clean credit history and that would be a firm criteria. And what the banks have said is that sometimes, there's good reason not to have perfect credit histories, even in a business or the individuals. And so they are going to be able to provide some discretion around that, because what we all have agreed to in this partnership with SAFT is a commitment to getting money out quickly to employees of businesses that are likely to survive this. And so we are much more flexible about credit history of directors and even of businesses where we think these are financially stable businesses which are likely to survive COVID-19.
Okay.
But the banks will apply their own. We've implored them to make them as light touch as possible. And I mean, just to give you an idea, the application forms will be available on our website and on the bank's websites by Friday. And we anticipate that the approval process will take 2 or 3 days and then the money will be deployed. So it's not going, we simply don't have the time for businesses to have to provide lots and lots of paperwork. It's going to be kind of very paper light.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Roland. So Bridget, go live date is on Friday.
Yes.
So practically speaking, what the business needs to do is by Friday, they need to be able to go into their bank. They have a business banker. Could they do that virtually? Is it something that they would need to do?
I think absolutely everything. I mean, we anticipate that most of this will be done online, and each of the banks is going to have its own particular online platform to facilitate this. If businesses have a relationship manager, they can go straight to their relationship manager. But we are planning to have, online signatures, etc. So there won't be any requirement for businesses to actually physically go into their branches. And the banks are also, certainly in at least 2 instances, the banks are already sifting through their current clients to see who they think might be affected and will be reaching out directly to them. So there's a kind of a push and a pull mechanism for businesses.
Okay, so once again, welcome to all the listeners. We've had an overwhelming response for this call as well. We want to encourage you guys to make sure that you get future updates of events that we're hosting at Entrepreneurship to the Point. You can follow us at E to the Point on Twitter, but also sign up for our newsletter on our website at www.ettp.co.za. We're hoping to get more of the funders on various webinars to be able to unpack these opportunities for small businesses. We've also just posted a poll. We'd like to encourage participants to please provide your insights and answers to the polls in order for us to be able to address some of these questions. I've got another business online, Cecilia from Paintage. She'd like to Cecilia, is there any specific question that you'd also like to pose to Bridget?
Yes, I do. Hi, Bridget. How are you?
Hello. Yeah, fine, thank you.
Fine. I wanted to ask, in the event that like you are working as a business owner and the funds that you would have used in terms of funding your own salary, can you access this money as well? I mean, you're on the payroll, or is the funding directly only for the employees that you work for? So in the painting industry, you've got contractors, and then obviously we pay them on every contract. So now that there is no contract based on COVID-19, in theory, we would then be giving them money when they're not working until a contractor comes. Is this money available for that?
So to answer your first question, we have restricted the money to exclude business owners.
Okay.
And the second point is, with contractors, we have also stipulated this is for permanent employees.
Okay.
So this would not be applicable for contractors.
Okay, all right.
So Bridget, on that note, it's only for full-time employees within an organization. So contract staff don't qualify.
No.
Self-employed staff, like we had a question around real estate agents, would not qualify. Am I correct?
No, if they're not permanent full-time employees, they would not.
Okay. We've one of another business online, Cherson, do you have a question for Bridget?
Yes, Bridget. Hi.
Hello.
I'm Creason Mudley, director of a company called GoTech. I just wanted to find out. First come, first basis.
Can you maybe just repeat your question, please?
Yes. The question is, do we have a specific time limit in terms of the actual loan application period, or is it on a first come, first serve basis?
So very much on a first come, first serve basis. So the R1 billion is available, and currently the 4 banks will have access to that money, and we haven't we basically said as fast as you are able to expend it and disperse it, you can come back for more. And then once the R1 billion is spent, then the money is finished. So very much first come, first served. I mean, the other point to make is that we have obviously capitalized this fund with R1 billion, but we've specifically set it up as a public benefit organization, so that if there are other funders or other organizations who want to use this as a vehicle to get money out to employees of SMMEs, they can do so too. So we are hopeful that the billion will grow, but yeah, it'll be first prize in the sense for us would be if this money is spent very quickly, because then I think we would have been successful in getting to employees as quickly as we can.
Okay, so maybe just to share some of the poll results that we've had. So out of our participants, we had 53 people that, 53% that have applied for some of the relief funds. Currently, the relief funds that's in the market is, you have the Solidarity Fund, which is more looking at kind of social elements around the COVID-19 epidemic. We have the Rupert Fund, which will be administered through business partners. The Oppenheimer Fund will go live on Friday, and that will be administered through the 4 big banks. That will be ABSA, Standard Bank, First National Bank, and Nedbank. We also have the Temporary Employee Relief Fund, which is administered through UIF. I know currently they're also looking at how they could potentially work with the banks to administer that. You have your Employee Tax Incentive, which SARS administers, and there you are able to apply for 500 Rand grant for employees earning below 6,500 and fits within the youth category of 18 to 29 years old. We have the Debt Relief Fund, which is where the majority of people are trying to apply. That is at 38% of our listeners have put in an application through the Debt Relief Fund, which is administered through the Department of Small Business Development. We have the Business Growth and Resilience Fund, the economic impact grant from IDC. Your commercial banks are also putting in solutions, and we have the tourism fund. Bridget, in your opinion, I've just shared a whole lot of information around so many funds out there. Based on the gravitas of the situation, is it enough?
Almost certainly not. The sad reality is that if you look at what governments in Europe and the US and others have done, this is a drop in the ocean. It isn't enough.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if we compare to us, if we compare to some of the other economies out there, the US putting, I think it was $2 trillion, the UK putting a stimulus package together that's really going to look at boosting. We need to also be cognizant of the fact that we come out of an economic recession. Prior to COVID-19, we were already going through a challenging economic times. And maybe in light of that, you know, hopefully, I'm impressing on you to be able to pass on this message to the banks that there will be a level of leniency in terms of some of those businesses that have already been having tough economic times prior to COVID-19. I think that in our experience in working with small businesses is that, you know, the aim is really for them to be able to effectively manage their cash flow, you know, keep the doors open, but it has been challenging times. So hopefully those businesses would be considered. I think we want to encourage businesses to ensure that they do contact their banks and make an application. Bridget, post the 15 weeks, what is the plan with the fund?
So post the 15 weeks, I mean, because these are 5-year loans, I mean, we could be sitting with no money for the next 5 years until everyone potentially pays it back. But any money that is paid back will go into the trust, and it will be reallocated to broadly support small businesses and economic activity and job creation in South Africa. To be completely honest, we've been working flat out to try and get the fund up and running and to try and get this initial money out the door. And so we haven't put any detail together on what that would be. That's a problem for another day when we get the money back.
Okay, so but there's definitely a view around, I think if I saw the press release, that we want to be able to ensure that there's continuity as the money comes back to be able to continue to support small businesses. I've got a question from Janine, and she says, I own my own travel business. My husband and I both run the business, and as travel has come to a complete halt with no cash flow, may we apply? We don't have any other employees besides ourselves. So they are the owners and the employees within the business.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we have designed this specifically for employees as opposed to business owners. So I'm afraid in this instance, no, this fund doesn't apply.
Yeah, and I think Janine, with the challenging times that we're in at the moment, we acknowledge that there's so many different types of employment types. So whether it be self-employed, like it sounds in your case, you're a business owner, but self-employed as well. The Minister of Small Business Development did mention that within the next couple of days, there will be an announcement around some sort of relief for those that are self-employed within the market. So please do sign up to our newsletter, sign up to our social media channels at ettp.co.za, and we will definitely try and get that information out to you as soon as possible. Let's just see if we can take a few more questions. Future work of my business has dried up given COVID-19, but its impact on the business will also be felt after the lockdown period. Actually, the impact will be mostly after lockdown. Can the scheme assist businesses for the lockdown impacts after the lockdown? So once again, Bridget, in this scenario, we're saying 15 weeks, which is definitely post-lockdown. They will still be able to apply.
Yeah, sweetheart. Sorry, just give me 1 second, my love. Yes, so to answer your question, what we have discussed was, is your business being impacted now, or is it likely to be impacted in the future? And you can therefore apply on the basis that it might be impacted in the future. The 15-week weeks obviously goes beyond lockdown, but we are trying to be, I mean, I think to answer your question is, you might not see the impact today, but you might see it in 2 months' time. If you can demonstrate today that the impact is likely and that the bank believes that that is a reasonable assumption, you could apply for this funding now.
Okay.
Is that I'm not sure if I answered that. I was a little distracted.
No, it's fine. I think it did answer it in a sense that the impact might be afterwards, so you can still apply for it. Bridget, are you fine for us to take just 1 or 2 more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we've got another question from Laika Sussman. She's one of our Property Point businesses in Cape Town, and she says, good morning all. Would funds be paid weekly or monthly? We said it would be weekly, correct?
Yes.
And how would the repayment work? I worry about ensuring that we have work contracts to repay the loan over 5 years. What if small business cannot repay during the period? It's a huge worry to be indebted as an SMME.
Sure. So 2 things. 1, there is no requirement to pay anything back until the end of the term. So we're hoping that that allows businesses to get back on their feet. The one thing we absolutely do not want to do is to create additional financial stress for businesses in the short term. So there is no requirement to repay anything until the end of the term. Although obviously as a small business, you might, as business starts to improve, you would obviously want to start to repay that. And the second point is that, as I mentioned, I think in the beginning, is this is subordinate to any other debt. So this, we are specifically saying that this debt comes at the very bottom of the rung in terms of other debt that the business may have taken on.
So just for the listeners again, the period of the loan will be 5 years. Do they have a choice to select a shorter period if they would like to?
No, but they can pay it back whenever they want to. So and it's interest free. So if they wanted to pay it back on 6 months' time, that would be absolutely fine. But okay, they're not required to.
Just for the listeners as well, the recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to Entrepreneurship to the Point on YouTube, you will find this webinar as well as our previous webinars that we hosted on information around COVID-19. We've got a question from Lance Klassen from Gravitas Communications, and the question is quite interesting. He says, should the funds not be coordinated? There seems to be gaps and duplication. So as funders, are you guys having discussions with, for instance, the likes of government, the Ruperts, Motsepe, Naspers has come out with a $1.5 billion solidarity fund. Is there a coordinated discussion as well to ensure that we are filling all the gaps in the market?
So we absolutely are having conversations with all of those people. But I think the key imperative for us was to get money deployed as quickly as possible when people are not paid and they have no way of feeding their families. And we just felt that if we could set something up and make it as streamlined as possible. We specifically haven't set up an administrative system within SAFT because we just felt it was going to take too long. So we went to the banks, we said, how quickly can you get this done? And they have moved at lightning speed. Government has moved at lightning speed to get us set up in the trust structure. So while I think coordination is great, I'm not sure we have the time to coordinate across all these bodies and help people at the same time. So we will continue to talk to them. We will continue to see where there are synergies and ability to work off others' infrastructure. But for now, our kind of imperative was trying to get this money out the door as quickly as possible.
Okay, and another question would be, I'm just going through the questions quickly. We have a question from Dorcas. Management and directors, are they able to qualify as well?
So directors, no. Management, yes, if they are employed and they're not shareholders.
Okay, so the shareholders not. Okay, so Let's just take a last question from the businesses that's on the panel. Do you guys have any specific questions for Bridget as well at this point in time?
Yes, Sean, I do for Bridget. Bridget, I just want to find out about loans for other sectors. You are focusing more on employee costs, and there's a big demand in terms of working capital and other costs for small businesses, because at the end of the day, we want to create a sustainable business, but without the ideal cost structures coming or funding coming through to sustain your business, then whatever funding we get for employees might be very short-lived if the business collapses. So,
Sure.
you know, are you looking at that area?
We're not. I mean, and you make a very valid point. And the truth is, we had to decide how we were going to deploy this money and be quite focused on where we were going to do it. What we hope is that by alleviating some of the payroll for that 15 weeks, it will allow businesses to divert some of that money to working capital. But we just don't have the bandwidth and the money to look at cash flow loans. I think that's something that banks might have to look at, other funders, but that's not where we have targeted this money, I'm afraid.
Okay. Cecilia, can we go to you next?
No, I'm okay. She's answered all my questions. Thank you so much.
We've got a question here from David Leroux from React24, one of our Property Point businesses in Cape Town. The concern is really, is the systems in place in order that nothing falls through the cracks? Is the banks confident that they're going to be able to manage the influx of applications, Bridget?
Yes. I mean, I don't want to talk on their behalf, but they have been working tirelessly to try and get their systems up and running. But we don't know. I mean, the truth is, we hope so, but we will know on Friday, I guess, to the extent that they're bombarded. But they are putting in place the systems as best they can through online, through inbox systems, where they are hoping to be able to cope with everything. And they have a fairly good idea, because as you can imagine, they have already been inundated by requests for support from their businesses. So I think they have a pretty good grasp on the kind of numbers. But yeah, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think we are uncharted territory. So our ability to really look at what's working and what's not working within the next couple of weeks is going to be important, and try and be as agile as possible.
And so just what I would say is that there are obviously quite a lot of people following our announcement yesterday who are contacting their banks. I would just ask him, it would make more sense just to wait till Friday, because the systems will be in place, the application forms will be available. And so as anxious as you might be to talk to your relationship banker or so forth, just wait, give them another day and a half just to get themselves up and running.
Yeah. I think also from entrepreneurship to the point, we will endeavor to try and get at least all the banks on a webinar as well. So in conjunction with yourself, Bridget, if we could maybe see if we can liaise with the banks to do a webinar before Friday and really share that information with the businesses. For those that would like to follow us, please do so on our social media channels, both on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter, or on our website at ettp.co.za, where we'll give more updates. Just the last question from my side before we get to Roland is, are we advising businesses, so this is 3,000 Rand per month per employee. Should they look at restructuring their salary that they would be paying out to their employees in order to be able to get that relief from a salary bill perspective? Or did you guys?
It's entirely up to them. It's entirely up to them. If they feel that that they could, I mean, it's happening already. I mean, we know from lots of businesses, people are cutting 50% of salaries or so forth. So we're pretty sure that this is happening. And some people are obviously looking at making people redundant, but there are instances where people are trying desperately as business owners to support as best they can in this time. So we're hoping that this 3,000 Rand a month will help them to alleviate some of that loss of income over that 15 weeks.
Okay, awesome. Roland, do you have a last question for Bridget?
Yes, Sean, I do. You've asked the first question that I wanted to ask with regards to the amounts. Second question would be, Bridget, to the other SMMEs who are banking with other of the other banks like Itala and your. When would I know you gave? What is the timeline that they could expect their banks to offer these services?
As quickly as their banks come on board would be my answer. So we are open for, I mean, we're kind of open for business, and we are happy to start having a conversation. Our view was, if we could get the first 4 banks over the line, we then also have a template that we can then roll out with smaller banks. And I mean, there's a question about unbanked businesses as well, but I mean, I don't think we've got an answer to that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Bridget, just once again, one of the criteria was also that a business needs to be in operation for 24 months. Is that correct?
That's right.
So if they under 2 years old, they would not be able to apply.
No.
Okay.
Again, there's going to be some flexibility on if your business has been going for 20 months or something. I'm sure that's a conversation worth having, but ideally we wanted businesses that have been established for some time.
Okay. So just in summary, Bridget, can we just quickly summarize the offering again for the listeners?
Sure. So this is R1 billion that is going to be deployed initially through the 4 big banks in terms of a 5-year interest-free loan to businesses with a turnover of under 25 million rand. The loan would be specifically for employees of those businesses and would be paid directly to their employees for 15 weeks weekly, an amount of 750 rand. Businesses should apply through one of the 4 banks, and they would need to be an existing client. Now, in the first instance, although this will broaden in due course, and the loan is interest-free for 5 years with no requirement of any capital repayment until the end of the loan, and the loan would be subordinate to all other debt, so would sit at the very bottom of the rung in terms of debt for the business. I'm not sure if I've left something out.
No. And where can the listeners get more information? I know you guys have set up a website.
Yeah. So we have a website which is www.op-gen/SAFT, SAFT, and you will find the information on that website.
Okay, so once again, I think that I'd like to commend the Oppenheimer generation philanthropy around putting in a solution that is really speaking to a lot of the needs out there from a small business perspective. Hopefully the test is really going to be in terms of the administration of the fund at the banking level, and who will be qualifying, who won't be qualifying, but it does seem to speak to the need of a small business and being able to preserve the jobs that is much needed out there. And I think that's going to was probably the important thing after COVID-19, is to ensure that we continue being able to be small businesses that are job creators. Thank you so much, Bridget. Let's please keep in contact around getting those banks on board for a chat. And once again, thank you everyone that has tuned in this morning. The information will be available on our YouTube channel. So this recording is available on our YouTube channel at Entrepreneurship to the Point. And further details and newsletter is also available on our website at www.ettp.co.za. Thank you so much, and all the best for everyone out there.
Thank you, Sean.